Calin Rovinescu, very nice to see you again. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Colin. It's great to see you again.
Great pleasure to have you as always. This is the second instance of In the Lounge, which is a new series that we've implemented to have more informal discussions with key industry executives, real influencers in the industry. So really appreciate you joining today. No need to introduce Calin. You have been the CEO of Air Canada from 2009 to 2021. You've also been throughout the years the chairman of the Star Alliance Chief Executive Committee. You've held the role of chairman of IATA for a couple of years, and you've had throughout your career numerous honors, and you have a pretty high involvement in academia also, including being the chancellor of the university, the current chancellor of the University of Ottawa. Looking back a little bit at Air Canada, you're very instrumental in getting Air Canada out of to avoid the bankruptcy situation, and after that you've helped grow Air Canada circa 50% in terms of employment, over 4,000%. I said 4,000% in terms of share price. But that's not all, right? I think your involvement in Air Canada has gone far beyond that. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that, Calin.
Thanks very much, Colin. Again, great to be here. Listen, we're extremely proud of the achievements and accomplishments as we transformed Air Canada from a struggling carrier into one of the world's leading carriers, and building out a global network that covers all continents of the world, and as you say, large employment gains and large share price gains. But of all of those things, the one thing that I am the proudest of, and say this is not generally something that enough people talk about, is the changed culture and the culture that we built there. One of the things that I believe in, especially in the aviation and aerospace universe, which is a business that is so key to the rest of the world, is that these businesses, to be sustainable, they have to have a living, breathing culture. And the level of engagement over the 12 years at Air Canada increased phenomenally. We empowered everything from our frontline people to eliminating layers and layers of bureaucracy and decision making. We used to say that there's no reason that if Air Canada is an 80-year-old company, that we cannot behave like an 80-year-old startup with the same startup mindset, the startup mentality. We see how successful new companies, who start with a clean sheet of paper, can go from 0 to 100 miles an hour in minutes. And that was always a bit my mantra, is that why can we not have that startup mindset? And I'd say that startup mindset helped us enormously in dealing with COVID. So when I look back and I say, some people ask me, what are the things that you're proudest of in your years at Air Canada? The number one thing is the changed culture. And that, I would say, is the one thing that is the likely most sustainable of all of the achievements that we've had over those 12 years.
And it shows. I mean, I think you've created a formidable company, and one that is capable of competing with anybody out there in the industry, and is making great progress in terms of becoming a true global airline player. Just moving on a little bit, Calin, we've instigated a tradition that the prior guest addresses a question to the next guest. So on our previous sequence, we had Subhashini Silvadas, who's the CEO of Air Asia Consulting, and she had a question for you. And by the way, you'll get to ask our next guest a question, but we'll come to that later. So the question from Suba was, if you were in a position of power to change something globally, how would you have dealt differently with COVID in the aviation industry? Very loaded question, lots of opportunity for discussion there.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting question, and there's no doubt that there are enormous number of learnings that are coming out of this COVID environment. I'm going to start by first reflecting a bit on the industry itself. This is an industry that from our perspective, it is extremely, extremely flexible. It has the capability of responding and reacting quickly to crisis. And the last crisis was, of course, now 20 years ago, 9/11. And we saw the resiliency of aviation post 9/11, as horrible as that was. And I think we're in the midst of seeing the resiliency of aviation in this COVID crisis. Airlines, quite apart from those airlines that had the staying power, the capability to finance themselves through COVID, and there were many that had their strong balance sheets and they had the courage to do what needed to be done. But we saw the speed of which decisions were taken to ground airplanes, to deal with deferring orders, to deal with taking capacity out, to deal with whatever it took to get costs down so that they can survive to live to fight another day. However, the number one area where I was, I'd say, somewhat disappointed, and I continue to be disappointed, is the level of collaboration between government and industry in terms of solving the problem. I think that we saw that in the early days of the pandemic, airlines had people on the ground, were able to see firsthand what was going on, and there wasn't enough consultation, in my view, globally. I'm not picking on any one government in particular. There wasn't consultation globally to a suitable level to see what can be done. I think that airlines are first and foremost safety and security experts, much more so than governments. And I think that was point one, how to deal with it. In many cases, the airline industry responded quickly and had sanitary measures and protocols to have the aircraft cleaned, to have PPE installed, to have mask requirements. In some cases, airlines, and Air Canada included, made the decision to stop flying to some destinations before governments decreed that we should stop flying. But the level of collaboration and consultation should have been better. And often governments talk about public-private partnerships in the context of infrastructure projects, but this is an opportunity for real public-private partnerships where the public could work collaboratively with the private sector. We just haven't seen enough of that. And I think that as we look forward, as we look at the vaccine mandates, as we look at the passports involved, we do need to have a much higher level of consultation. We've fallen short, I would say, in this area, and I know that IATA continues to advocate for having a much stronger level of cooperation.
So where do you think we are now in terms of the restart, Calin? And in particular, people are wondering when business travel resumes. We can see the leisure travel come back, and there's a lot of pent-up demand there. But the big question is, where is the business travel? That's the high yield, profit-making side of the business. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, look, Colin, I think that right now it characterizes us as being at the endemic stage of this, meaning that the pandemic has largely passed. We now have to have a way of living with this environment going forward. This is not something that is going to go away and that we will revert overnight miraculously to where we were, in 2019. That's not happening. So we know we have to live with this. But we've moved on beyond the pandemic. So I think the worst is absolutely behind us. And you're quite right in saying that, the industry has always characterized this as a tripartite recovery progressively. First, leisure. We know that there was a pent-up demand for people to go and experience some leisure time. There was also a desire to visit friends and family that you had not seen during the early part of the pandemic. So leisure was the first to recover, and then domestic travel, and then thirdly international. And of course the business travel overlays. Sometimes it's domestic business travel and sometimes it's international. And there's no doubt that the business travel is the one that lags, and part of that is because businesses have been so shut down. I think that in many places, and the United States, I think, has been leading the way in this, business travel has started to come back. And we're seeing now that many businesses are starting to plan when they are calling their employees back. They're reauthorizing their employees to travel. As you know, many companies had categoric travel bans for a while, so that's no longer happening. Consultancy firms are starting to travel. So I'd say we're at probably, the stronger economies are witnessing something in the vicinity of 50% or so of business travel coming back. Many people in many different businesses want to travel again. And I think people also recognize that, we talked before about culture, that to build a proper culture, you need to have face time. You need to see people live. I think that having, only, screen and, two-dimensional relationships with people long-term is not conducive to building great companies. And so I think with the passage of time, business travel will come back, and we're already seeing, as I say, good, strong signs of at least halfway there.
I'm with you 100% on that. But recently we started traveling again, and I can tell you it's an absolute delight to actually see people and shake hands and get together. It's it will come back. What's your view on the current duopoly between Airbus and Boeing? And what are the chances that one day we will see an alternate player in that field?
I'd say that I want to continue seeing innovation, and typically innovation comes from new entrants who have a desire to shake up the status quo. I think we can also ask the question as to would we have seen the evolution of the Neo and the evolution of the Max without the introduction of the C series? And I'd say you have different opinions on that, but if nothing else, the introduction of the C series caused those others to move a bit more quickly and innovate. So I'd say that we cannot have a situation where the status quo means lack of innovation. We now have a built-in driver on innovation, which is the various environmental requirements and the requirements for airlines and for the industry itself to deal with carbon emissions. So that's going to happen anyway. But the third player was necessary to shake it up. I think it's very difficult for a third player to exist long-term. In terms of mainstream narrow-body airplanes or mainstream wide-body airplanes. I don't see a third player coming anytime soon, but you do want to have that environment where the two incumbents are challenged.
One element of innovation that's front and center of everybody's mind in our industry and other industries also is how to address the environmental issues. And this is close to your heart as former chairman of IATA, as well as at Air Canada, obviously. IATA has recently announced the target of net zero carbon by 2050, which is a step further than what had been previously announced and under CORSIA, amongst other things. Just a few opinions from your side on what that means for the industry. And then beyond that, I'm proud to announce that our next guest in the lounge will be Sebastian Mikos. You know Sebastian very well. He's the ex-CEO of Kenya Airways, ex-CEO of LOT. But more importantly, he's now the Senior Vice President, Environment and Sustainability at IATA. So he's right in the middle of this entire debate. So, your thoughts maybe on the whole issue and then your question to Sebastian, our next guest.
Sure. So first of all, the way I've thought about this is that there are short, medium, and long-term drivers and tools that we have to address this. The short-term tools are what is out there today. And that means, today we have some component of sustainable aviation fuels. Today we have, which airlines, including Air Canada and many other carriers, have started to incorporate into their fuel streams and be actually mixing it with jet fuel, but using sustainable fuels and offering customers the chance to participate in purchasing and contributing to the higher cost of sustainable aviation fuels as part of the strategy on dealing with ESG. So, that is one of the drivers. Taking carbon out of the atmosphere, there are opportunities and partnerships with organizations that actually capture carbon, and that is available today. Having carbon offsets and taking fewer trees down and planting more trees, and therefore using offsets for the time being is an alternative. And of course, purchasing more fuel efficient airplanes, as many carriers who have the capability to do that. These new, we talked before about the MAX and the NEO that consume, that are more fuel efficient, and likewise, of course, the A220, the C series, and so on and so forth. Having the opportunity to buy next generation aircraft. Longer term, you have the electrification going on, and there's a lot of excitement around both the regional aircraft that call it 50 to 80 seats. Exciting projects that I've seen quite a few myself, including been approached for investment from some of these players that I'm considering. Likewise, for these eVTOLs, the vertical takeoff and landing, sort of the modified helicopters, if you like, electric. That too is exciting. Sort of fewer passengers, but it's a connectivity model. That's longer term, but I'm very confident, and especially on some of these routes that, especially in Europe, where governments are mandating that short haul flying should be done with not with the conventional aircraft. So I think we have a menu there. But my question to my friend Sebastian, who I know very well and respect enormously, is to say, Sebastian, I was the chairman of IATA the year that CORSIA was adopted in 2016. So now we're 5 years in. Are airlines actually doing anything about it collectively as a group? Or is it largely lip service that is being paid? How are we doing internationally, from jurisdiction to jurisdiction? We built this very complicated model that was intended to be fair to the more developed countries and fair to the developing countries in terms of their respective emissions. How are we doing on the CORSIA 5 years after adoption? And is there a risk that we will see individual countries come back and start reimposing a Frankenstein type of regulation of emissions? That's my question.
Well, that's a very loaded and interesting question. I look forward to putting it to Sebastian and look forward to his answer. I'm sure it'll be very interesting. Calin, thank you tremendously for your participation today. I think you're an example in our industry. You've been through a lot. You've done a lot for the industry. You've done a lot for Air Canada and the Canadian skies, amongst others. So you are truly an example. We're absolutely honored to have had you on the program today. Thanks very much. And we'll be crossing paths again soon, I'm very sure. Thank you, Calin.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Colin. Continued success.